It took 66 years to go from the Wright brothers to the moon. Experts say it won't take that long for artificial intelligence to turn everything on its head. AI is top of mind for the state's legislative leadership as well. Randy Yohe talked with Joshua Spence, Chief Information Officer for Alpha Technologies, and Delegate Evan Hansen, a Democrat from Monongalia County, on what AI means for now and the future.
Artificial intelligence, AI, it's been around in one form or another for quite a while, but it seems to become a top of mind in the last couple of years or so. So let's break it down with an AI 101, if we will. I've got a couple of gentlemen here that are going to help me do that. Josh Spence was the Chief Information Officer for the state of West Virginia from 2018 to 2023, and you were also the Chief Information Security Officer for the state. Delegate Evan Hansen is an environmental consultant with a background in computer science. Gentlemen, thanks for being here today.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
All right, let's start with you, Josh. AI, artificial intelligence. Let's just get a basic definition because it falls into a couple of different categories, right?
Yeah, absolutely. AI has been around for a while, and there's a couple different variations of how it's leveraged. But ultimately, it's technology and it's a tool. So one form of which AI has been around is you see that natural language processing. And so natural language processing is when you go to a web browser or search engine, Google or Microsoft, and you search something, you can pretty much ask the question however you want, yet the search engine's able to interpret what you're asking. And so that's one form. The form that's really come out more recently that's gotten a lot of craze is generative AI, where you're asking the technology to generate something creative or create something off of a prompt.
And we have legislation, Delegate Hansen, regarding a number of aspects, but from what I heard from the speaker back before the session started and some others as well, we want to just get a hold of AI before it gets a hold of us for both good and bad. Am I right?
I think that's true, and I think we need to educate ourselves as lawmakers because AI has great potential to do good, and it also has potential to do bad, so we want to be able to make smart policy.
Let's start with some more definitions. Deep fakes. I mean, that's more than Photoshop on steroids, right?
Absolutely. So a deep fake is where you're taking a video or an audio or both, and you're digitally altering that, usually on a person or an object, and you're changing what that object or person looks like. So the real dangerous piece to it is when you're changing the voice to make it say something different, the person to say something different, or they look like a different person. And of course, those can be used for malicious purposes.
We've heard that in the House the other day with a bill that talked about deep fakes regarding elections and campaigning. Tell me about the concerns there.
Well, there is a concern. We saw what happened with somebody essentially faking President Biden's voice in New Hampshire. So deep fakes can be used directly in elections. I mean, there are some subtleties related to that bill. The definition of deep fake, in my opinion, included things like photoshopping images on a campaign mailer. And so I think that kind of underscores the importance of us really getting educated on this issue so we could properly define things in the bills that we pass and target the truly malicious actors rather than over-regulating.
It's all still pretty new to understand. When you talk about that bill, how would enforcement come about?
I think that's one of the good questions as well. I mean, that particular bill outlawed the use of deep fakes for elections within 60 days of an election, and I assume some type of complaint would need to be filed. But that's even without deep fakes, there's all sorts of malicious things that happen with elections in the days leading up to election day. So we're not in totally uncharted territory. It's just that even more malicious things could be done if you're impersonating somebody.
Josh, there's another bill out besides campaign and election that has to do with pornography and minors, and I know that there's a big concern there when it comes to some of these deep fakes.
Yeah, absolutely. So just like any technology advancements, those tools can be used for good, or they can also be used for bad and for malicious intent. And so we need to be on the forefront of making sure there's protections in place to protect citizens, and this is a big protection that needs to be put, and I'm glad to see that they're moving it forward.
Let's talk about education. You sent me a couple of notes that I thought were interesting, that Education's initial response is to slow down and inhibit the use of AI in the classroom. Is cheating right? But no, let's start with you, Josh. There's a number of ways that AI is a positive tool for education.
Absolutely. It is a tool that we need to incorporate into how students learn and how they perform as students, because the expectation once they get into the workforce will be to leverage AI as part of their job. So we want to make sure we're getting on the front end of that and not locking it down. So let me give you just a real quick example. When I was in high school, we'd ask the math teacher, can we use a calculator on the test? And of course, her answer was no, we couldn't. She said, are you going to carry a calculator around everywhere you go? Well, yet we do now, right? So it's just important to understand where the technology is going to do with the workforce so that we're properly preparing them.
And it's not just math, it's science as well that we have to relate AI into our educational system, isn't that?
I think it's everything. It's all the subjects. And I think one of the concerns is what about cheating, right? So, and that's a real concern and something that needs to be dealt with by our school system.
Talk about AI and dangers. You had a couple of bullet points when it comes to some of the dangers that we talked about elections and we talked about, pornography and minors. Those are some of the big ticket issues, but there's some other dangers as well.
Yeah, so I think one of the dangers in AI is that it's being related to how it can mimic a human. So they describe AI a lot of times with anthropomorphic descriptions like it can see or it can think. The drawback to that, unfortunately, though, is that it can allow for an assumption of what the AI can do that's not accurate. So I think it's one of those areas that we need to be really careful when we're describing it, and that, like the delegate said, making sure we understand these terminology because it's really important.
We talk about there's a task force now that's being put together to try to look at some of these general issues, break them down, and understand where we need to go from here with both the House and the Senate, the West Virginia Legislature. They talk about protecting consumer information and delivering public services. So that's a range for AI, is it not?
Yeah, that task force is important. I hope that it actually gets constituted because, like I said, we have a lot to learn because it touches on everything. It touches on the public sector, touches on the private sector, touches on education like previously discussed, and there's civil liberties issues and privacy issues. So there's so much that we need to try to understand better.
Generative artificial intelligence. I think we went through the definitions already, but when we talk about generative, am I overthinking it when it's just something that's generated from nothing?
Well, it's definitely generated from the large language model, which is trained on a lot of data. So that's really important, but it does generate what is considered unique content.
Well, I got a big list of them here. Assessing the use of artificial intelligence in the workforce and how this could affect employment levels, types of employment. Where can we go from there, Delegate Hansen?
Well, there are people projecting that a lot of jobs that we have today will be made obsolete by AI. So I think that's one thing that we need to understand.
So we got to look ahead there. Possibilities. You also talked about, Josh, that it's a tool. I mean, what kind of toolbox does it go with, and then how will it be best used? When you say a tool, what exactly do you mean?
So technology provides a capability for the human to leverage as a tool. And so it's going to be really important for us to teach a digital proficiency. Just as you would have a chef would use different tools in the kitchen, or a surgeon would use different tools in the operating room, AI is going to integrate itself into the tools that we have, and being able to understand how that helps and how that to interface with it will be very important.
And I think that we have some concerns when you hear about AI right now, you start to think of the negative, I think too many people do, because the bad guys are going to grab onto it a little quicker maybe than the good guys are going to be ready to defend it. I mean, that's one of the reasons we're looking at these bills, isn't it?
Yeah, and I do have some real concerns about it. I don't think it can be stopped, but for example, I think AI can be used to kind of reinforce some of the divisions in society and things like that, and turn people against each other. And I do have concerns about that, especially if people take what comes out of an AI system as the truth.
What else? Is there anything else that needs to be top of mind when we're talking about this subject?
Well, so I think one area that we want to make sure we're looking at is moving people forward in understanding the definitions, and then we got to work on understanding how this is going to impact education, which we talked about, and then I think the security factor, because you're going to see some cybersecurity issues as a result of AI as well, because like you mentioned, the threat actors are going to be much faster at adopting its capability, and then the good guys are going to be able to use it to defend.
Cybersecurity fits right in there. I know that the legislature last year gave $45 million to Marshall University to develop the state's cybersecurity school, if you will, to be a national model. So that fits in the bill right there.
Oh, it does. It's definitely something we need to look at, and we can't invest enough resources in that because, you know, I think professionals are aware of many threats that people like me don't even know are being fended off. And if those are going to increase with AI, we need to get ahead of that.
We got less than a minute left, but I know last year we passed a bill that creates a pilot program collecting data on the health of state roads using AI. So it could be rudimentary too. It doesn't have to be off in the clouds or off in the computer. It's basically a learning process, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. AI is going to be able to create an opportunity to get insights out of massive amounts of data that we couldn't do normally.
Oh. Josh Spence, Delegate Evan Hansen, thanks for being here today. We're going to just continue to do our deep dive into these deep fakes and everything else that's going on with artificial intelligence. Back to you.
Thank you for spending this time with us. Catch the Legislature today, Monday through Friday at 6 p.m. And remember, West Virginia Public Broadcasting covers the session daily in our radio news program, West Virginia Morning, and on our news site at wvpublic.org. We also broadcast the daily floor sessions of both the House and the Senate on the West Virginia channel. I'm Curtis Tate. For everyone here at WVPB, thanks for joining us and have a great evening.